Remember, I have 18 people full-time working for me, what have you, so they cater to me. I'm spoiled. Hey, where's my talking points on Jose Hernandez? And then Michael de la Rocha laughs. And he says, Councilman, you've introduced Jose Hernandez hundreds of times over the last few years to the community because I kid you not. When I talk to young people, and I talk to tens of thousands of them, I think it's my obligation to talk to young people, to inspire them, to get them to understand, look, if a son of immigrants could do this, that, you can do better. If I can go to college and be an ingeniero, young women, you can be ingenieros too. But I never fail to speak to people without mentioning Jose Hernandez, because I look up to you. He cast a shadow on that campus. I kid you not. Very few ingenieros who are Latinos. And then to go to graduate school and then double major and then do all the things that you've done with your degrees, all the inventions you've contributed to, all the things that you've done. It's my honor to be here and to introduce you. And one thing that I tell children, Jose Hernandez affected me again, because I always used to tell the kids, the sky's the limit. Well, guess what? Now I have to tell them, I've always said the sky is the limit, but guess what, little people? It's not the limit. You can go beyond. So it's really wonderful to see so many of us, so many of you here to pay honor to one of our own. A Latino, an immigrant, an American citizen, a proud human being, someone we should all be proud of, someone we should emulate, someone we should actually speak of positively to our children. Because if there's a lofty title of assembly member or congressman or woman or what have you, I'll tell you what, very few titles like astronaut, very few titles can top astronaut. President, okay. I can't think of another. And on the way over here, I sit down, very talkative woman was sitting next to me, and we take off, and about 20 minutes into the flight, she notices what I'm reading. We have something in common. We're talking, what have you. She says, what brings you to Washington? I said, I get to introduce my friend, Jose Hernandez. He's an astronaut. And then she says, oh, really? I said, yeah, he went up in space last year. She goes, I remember that. She goes, which one is he? And I said, Jose Hernandez. She goes, well, what does he look like? I said, he's, dark skin like me. He has a mustache. She goes, oh, the handsome one. So, ladies and gentlemen, it's my honor to introduce to all of you Jose Hernandez, a.k.a. El Guapo, the astronaut.
Muchas gracias, Tony. I'm glad you changed the names to protect the innocent. But, you said about topping things, I think Senator Feinstein is going to retire in a few years, so we'll see you at the campaign trail, all right? All kidding aside, I am truly honored and humbled to be here at the Latino Leaders Luncheon, and I'm very, very gratified to see that we have a large number of Latino leaders here and a large contingent of students as well. And I just want to recognize the fact that the Washington Center has brought lots of students. I know some of them are from Veracruz, and some from Puerto Rico. And so what I'm going to do today is I'm going to tailor my talk and talk about leadership, about Latino leadership. And it's going to be, in a sense, in a form that I like to call anecdotal with respect to talking a little bit about my life in terms of how there's leaders in every aspect of our life in terms of how they behave and basically help us along the way. Porque this journey of becoming an astronaut and going to space was not a journey of one man, but it was a journey of a familia. It was a journey of teachers. It was a journey of professionals that helped me along the way to achieve a dream. And I'll be talking about that throughout my talk. The one thing I did want to do is I want to recognize our ambassador de Mexico, the Honorable Arturo Sarucan, who was kind enough to accompany and represent our President de Mexico in Kennedy Space Center during our launch. So he represented Presidente Felipe Calderón, and thank you very much for being there with my family. I appreciate it. A lot of people always ask, it says, okay, how did you become an astronaut? What was the process and how did it happen? ¿Cómo pasó? I mean, eres un mexicano del barrio. You grew up in Stockton, California. I mean, how did you get there from there to become an astronaut? And I think it's worth talking a little bit about my life in terms of how it all originated. As most of you know, I come from a typical migrant farm working family from La Piedad, Michoacan. And a lot of people say, well, what's a typical migrant farm working family like? A typical, see, if we would have used NASA Velcro, this wouldn't happen. That's one of the benefits of NASA, right? So if anybody ever asks you what has NASA ever done, we invented Velcro and it works. So what's a typical migrant farm working family like? Well, let me just paint the scenery for you. And a lot of you are going to be able to resonate with my story because a lot of you have very similar experiences. And please tell them I'm not here. What we did was every year around February timeframe, my father, we would be in Michoacan, La Piedad, Michoacan. My father would load up us kids, 4 of us, in the car with my mom, and we would make the 2-day trek up to Southern California. We would start off in Ontario, and we'd start picking strawberries. And from there, we would then work our way up to the Central Valley, up to Salinas, working La Lechuga, El Asadón del Betabel, sugar beet hoeing. And then we would spend the bulk of our time up in Northern California, in Stockton, Modesto, Lodi, and we would work picking cucumbers, picking cherries, picking durazno, peaches, and then we would end the journey with the grapes in the grape season. This would take us about November timeframe. In November, what my parents would then do is they would say, okay, we're going to go back to Mexico. You know, it's tiempo de las fiestas navideñas, so it's not worth it to put you guys in school in Mexico. We want you to get 3 to 4 months worth of homework. This was maestras, and you take it to La Piedad with you, and then we would self-study ourselves there. And then come February, March, that whole process would repeat itself. So you can see how difficult it was in the early days for us, for our education process. This happened all the way till I was about 12 years old, 11, 12 years old. Because we would go to 3 or 4 different school districts throughout the school year. We would miss 3 or 4 months of school, and then so, you know, what happened to me was that it was tough for me to learn the English language, you know, because we were Spanish speaking in La Familia. Even though I was born in the States, I was speaking Spanish en la casa. Y eso sí, era español de rancho. You know, it wasn't formal Spanish. It was Spanish. And I think what made us different from a typical migrant farming family was the fact that my parents, in spite of their 3rd grade elementary school education, they gave a lot of importance to education. What made them different is that Monday through Friday, they always saw us that we went to school. Wherever we went, eso sí, era 3 or 4 different school districts, but wherever we went, we were enrolled in school. Eso sí, se llegaba sábado y domingo y fregarle en el campo. We would work in the field Saturday and Sunday. And while every kid loves summer vacation, you know, you can imagine we dreaded it porque that meant we were going to be out there 7 days a week as opposed to 2 days a week. And so I remember, what started changing things for us. Well, first let me tell you the one thing that my dad was, I think he was a master at getting us motivated. Every day after working in the fields, we would get in the car. Saturday, Sunday, we'd get in the car and we would have, crusted Levi's, because in the morning it's soggy and wet, and so you get mud on your Levi's. By the end of the day, it dries and it's cake baked, so it's stiff. You get in the car, you're all dusty, sweaty, and you're in the back of the car. And every day before he started the car, he would look back at us and he says, "¿Cómo se sienten?" And I said, "Well, we're tired." And I said, "Remember this feeling." He says, "Because if you don't go to school, es lo que van a hacer toda su vida. This is your future if you don't go to school." Very powerful message that sort of stuck to us. I think my mom was more of a, I swear if she went to college, she would have been a great psychologist. Because mothers have the ability to put the burden on you, to challenge you. Dice, "Ay, mijo," no, she says, "Ustedes van a tener mucha mejor vida que nosotros, y ojalá nos puedan ayudar cuando estén grandes," and all that, and there they are, putting the guilt trip on you, right? But the important thing was that she set the bit on us, because she would always talk about college. She would always, when we would go to a nice, clean office, she would see el señor con corbata y todo eso, and she would say, "Mira, así quiero verlos a ustedes, trabajando en una oficina, no trabajando en el campo como nosotros." But she would set the bit, and she would always talk of when we went to college, when we went to the university. She would never say, "If you go." She said she expected us to go, and that set the bit right away. And to me, those are very powerful messages that they gave. The other thing that they did, which I think was very different from typical migrant farm working families, was they sat down with us every day at home, and we did the homework in the kitchen. And they would, nos arreglaba algo para comer, but she said, "No se levanten hasta que terminen la tarea." And first, second, third grade, that worked fine for them, because they could help us with the homework and all that. Fifth, sixth, seventh grade, ya ni papas le entendían ellos, ¿verdad? But they were still smart enough to realize if we finished the homework or not, ¿verdad? And I guess my point is as parents, because I'm a parent of 5 kids, is that we need to spend time with our kids during the homework process. It's not just a matter of telling the kids, "Oye, mijo, corre, haz la tarea y deja ver mi novela, Destilando Amor," or whatever. You guys want to see La Gaviota? I'm not sure what novela is out there now, but I remember during time period, that one was a big one. And it doesn't suffice for the fathers to go out con los amigos afuera del arbolito y tomar unas cervezas. The whole thing is you got to engage, and you got to be a family, and you got to be together. A lot of times, we put the burden a lot on the public school system, but you know what? It starts in the family. If the family has to start that process, and then we can then point to the school system and say, "Okay, why isn't my kid doing this?" Once you answer the question that I'm doing everything at home to make sure my son succeeds or my daughter succeeds, then I think we can hold the public school system accountable. But it starts at home. The other thing that happened during my education system, as you know, we would go up and down California. What happened in terms of what made us stop doing what I call the California circuit, was a visit by a second grade teacher. It was amazing. I'm the youngest of 4 in my family, and it was November. It was time to go. I was in the second grade. It was time to go back to Mexico. And my dad said, "Okay, arreglen las cosas, and nos vamos, agarren sus tareas." Of course, I went to my second grade teacher, and at that time, era una chinita, fresh off of college, very young, beautiful, and she was tall. I was in second grade, so she seemed tall. Ahora la veo and está bien chaparrita, but she was tall at that time, and I told her, and I asked her, I said, "Hey, we're gonna go to Mexico. Can I have can I have 3 or 4 months worth of homework?" And of course, she had been through that with my other three siblings. She's been through that process. I saw her roll her eyes, and she said, "You know what, Jose? Tell your parents I'm going to be home tonight. I'm going to go visit your house." Y yo dije, "Okay, so está bien, señor." Of course, I went running home that day to tell my parents, try to give them as much notice as possible. And we lived about a mile and a half from the school. Y en ese tiempo, you could walk to school for a mile and a half. Now we'll get arrested if we have our child walk a mile to school, right? But en ese tiempo, we go through tracks and everything, and we ran home to school. So I ran home, and of course, you get home, you get two different reactions from your parents. Okay, first thing I tell my dad, "Va a venir la maestra," and of course he says, "¿Qué hiciste, muchacho? What'd you do? What kind of trouble do you get into now?" No, va a venir, va a hablar no sé de qué, porque le dije que íbamos a ir a México. And okay, so the other reaction is completely opposite. La mamá, "Va a venir la maestra, hay que limpiar la casa, hay que hacer tortillas de harina, and hay que hacer comida para darle de comer a la maestra." You know how mothers are, right? Especially Mexican mothers. They want to be as hospitable as possible, and they prepare the dinner and everything. And okay, so what that happened, and the teacher came. The teacher came and gave and in her broken Spanish, my parents broke in English. They got the message together in a language that my parents could understand. And she said, I remember her saying, "Han de plantar raíces en un lugar." Set roots in one place. Dice, porque tienen hijos que son muy inteligentes, les gusta la escuela, y denles una chance para que puedan estudiar. Give them a chance so they can study. And to my parents' credit, we took that to heed. He took that to heed, that advice to heed, and we started making stock in our home. Eso sí, for a migrant farm worker to stay in one place, that's tough because farm work is not available year round in one particular place. And I remember mi pobre papa used to go out in the tule fog in the middle of winter when it was cold and freezing, and he would go and work in la poda, and pruning cherry trees, peach trees, and all that, and just to make ends meet. So it wasn't an easy life after that, but it was a sacrifice that he made that we realized that he was making. And so what happened was, unfortunately, I have to confess that I'm old enough to remember the tail end of the Apollo program, and so I was about 7, 8 years old when the Apollo program was going on. And of course, everybody during that time saw the astronauts on TV as they walked on the moon, ¿verdad? And we were no different. The only difference is we had the old consola TVs with the integrated speakers, las cuatro patitas, blanca y negra, and a very fuzzy, snowy picture. Que a veces, sometimes you get that horizontal bar that you would have to go like that so that it stops. You guys remember that, right? That was our TV. We also, of course, the satellite didn't exist at that time. And also, we couldn't afford cable, so we had the what we call the rabbit ear antennas, right? And so whenever something happened that was very important, first of all, we didn't have a remote. So guess who the remote was for the youngest in the family, which was yours truly. Cambiar el canal y a subirle el volumen y todo eso. I would do it all. And then of course, when something important happened, my dad would ask me, "Muchachos, ajusta la antena para get a better reception." Of course, and then what happens when you go and you grab the antenna? You get good ground, right? An electrical engineer, I knew that. You get good ground, and so what does your dad tell you? Ay, quédate, deja vernos. So I'm doing in forma contorsionista, trying to look at the image as I'm adjusting the TV. To make sure I get a glimpse of the astronauts as well. And now I kid with my siblings. I said, "Ya ven, it was through osmosis, that the signals went through my brain, and that's how I became an astronaut. The astronauts came through me, ya ven, por eso. That's why I became an astronaut." And so, but that's really truly when the dream was born, is that I was about 8 years old when I first saw the astronauts walking on the moon. And the images I saw, you hear them talk, and then you hear that beep, and it's 1/6 the gravity, so they're kind of like floating in slow motion. And then I would run outside, and you would see the full moon. And I'd see it, I run inside, I see the astronauts walking on the moon. I would do the same thing again and do that. And I'm sure every 8, 9-year-old at that time was fascinated and wanted to be an astronaut as well. And so what happened with me was I got hooked on that. I said, I'm going to be an astronaut. And of course, I shared that dream with my parents. And to their credit, they allowed me to dream. That's the other thing that we don't do. We don't allow our kids to dream. Sometimes we put our own barriers in front of us, and we don't allow our kids to dream. And my parents were very supportive and said, "Así, mijo, just study hard and y lo puedes lograr." I'm sure in the back of their mind estaban diciendo, "Pobrecito, deja que sueñe," pero hay que animarlo. Let's encourage him. He doesn't stand a chance, but let's not break his bubble. But I was naive enough to think that I could get selected, that it was not an impossible dream. And I kept working towards that. I kept saying, that's what I'm going to do. And what happened, here's another thing, the power of mentors. Even if you don't know the mentors, just by example, I was a senior in high school, getting ready to graduate. I knew I was going to University of Pacific to major in engineering because math, English was not my strongest suit. It was math because of the inability of learning English in the early years. I migrated to math, and 2 + 2 is 4 in cualquier idioma. And so I knew I was going to major in engineering. But then I heard some astounding news, and that was that Dr. Franklin Chang Diaz got selected as an astronaut. Okay, the name Chang, no me pareció, ¿verdad? Chang, ¿qué onda? But then I heard Diaz. I said, wow, that sounds like Hernandez, Diaz. I wonder if he's Latino. And I started looking at his bio, and I noticed that he was the first Latino American astronaut to get selected by NASA. Had a PhD, and he came from humble beginnings, just like me, but he came from Costa Rica. Entonces me dio envidia. I was jealous. Pero envidia de la buena, the good type of jealousy. I said, si este vato pudo, ¿por qué yo no? Why can't, if he was able to do it, why can't I? I mean, he seems like a homie like me, so I'm gonna go ahead and so that's when I gave the promise to myself, personal promise, that I was gonna do everything in my power to get selected as an astronaut. I said, if that means going to graduate school and getting advanced degrees, that's what I was going to do. And of course, that's when I had the blessing of meeting my good friend Tony Cardenas, who hopefully encouraged him to run for mayor, but don't run for Senate. Okay, ahí te gano, no te creas. I'm just kidding there, but so what happened? So what happened was then I went ahead and finished graduate school and started working at Lawrence Livermore National Laboratory. And there, basically, I worked in my career, worked on 3 major projects there. I worked in a Star Wars project, the development of an X-ray laser, which meant electronic equipment being deployed up in space. So that allowed me to learn about orbital mechanics. Second one was working on a mammography project, developing the first full-field digital mammography project for the early detection of breast cancer. This opened up a whole new field of study in developing cancer detection algorithms for images in digital image processing. So we worked with a company in Denver, Colorado, Fisher Imaging, and helped them develop the first full-field digital mammography system. And the third was full circle. I worked with the Russians. I spent 2 years here at Department of Energy working in the nuclear nonproliferation arena, where we basically helped the Russians dispose of nuclear material. And so in that process, I was able to learn a little bit of Russian. And the reason why I did that is that during this whole time, I was applying for the NASA for astronaut program. And every year I would ask myself, okay, Jose, what have you done differently to make yourself more attractive, more marketable to NASA to become an astronaut? And if I couldn't answer that question, I say, you're slacking, dude. You got to do something different, and you got to improve yourself. And so that's why it wasn't a accident that I started working in the Star Wars project, because that was space related. Medical, that's the more you know about your body and medicine, the better the NASA likes it, because there's a lot of self-care, self-management, self-medication up in space when you don't have a doctor. And then the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Project, I worked because it was during that time that the US and Russia had signed an agreement to develop a international space station. And I put two and two together right away. I said, you know what? Vamos a estar trabajando con los rusos allá. So when this project came up to work with the Russians and learn the Russian language and culture, I jumped on it because I said, that's what's going to make me more attractive to NASA. And I applied for 6 straight years, and I would always get a form letter that says, hey, don't call us, we'll call you. And it wasn't until the